Brain rot isn't just a term the kids are saying online. It's here. And in professional circles, it's known as cognitive offloading.
We've all felt it. AI can be a help or a hindrance, and answering that question is all about culture and mindset.
We're here to talk about how to best approach the jagged technological frontier we find ourselves in.
Welcome to the pre-read.
Just like the slides you get before your next big meeting, the pre-read prepares you, CFOs and other executives, for the next big thing. It's the global podcast where finance, sustainability, audit, and risk come together in the C-suite.
If you're making decisions at scale or need to understand the leaders who are and what they're thinking about, you're in the right place. This is the pre-read, and it's brought to you by Workiva. I'm Steve Soder, accounting enthusiast and Diet Coke aficionado.
And I'm Melissa Zucker, sustainability nerd and equal opportunist caffeine addict. Today, we're talking to Dr. Jen Stave of the Harvard Digital Data Design Institute, aka D-Cubed. My takeaways from this conversation: first, not all tasks, or people for that matter, are best suited for AI, which means experimentation and monitoring is really important, especially for tasks that require both retention and attention to the underlying information. And second, culture has a big impact on how this will succeed or fail. We've tried to improve how humans work together for centuries, and now AI is upending some of those norms.
My takeaways from the conversation? Well, first, as opposed to a traditional transformation project, the change management for AI might never end, and that's quite different from how a traditional project has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And second, ultimately, this isn't a conversation about technology. It's a foundational discussion about people and how you optimize human labor rather than optimizing a flashy new AI tool. So with that, let's get to our conversation with Dr. Jen Stave. Well, Jen, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Glad to have you.
Happy to be here.
So clearly, Gen AI is offering gains in productivity. It's helping to improve some accuracy. But one of the things that you've talked about is these really interesting and important edge cases where Gen AI is actually counterproductive. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think the audience is going to find that really interesting.
Yeah, it really is an underreported story. If you look in the media or in social media, a lot of it is focused on the productivity gains. AI can help you be superhuman in all of these ways, but it's really missing an important undercurrent where AI doesn't help you. We've found this in D-Cubed Institute in many of our research experiments that we've done. And just by way of context, what we do in D-Cubed is essentially act like the clinical trials arm for generative AI. We assume AI is like a drug, and we go into companies and we test its efficacy, its dosage, its adverse harm, and then take that information and share it back into the world. And so in one of these clinical trials that we did, we looked at the productivity of AI with consultants. And this was a study run by our Laboratory for Innovation Science, specifically Kareem Lakhani as the head researcher. And what they found was that, yes, absolutely, AI helped those consultants do their daily tasks more effectively, but not in every case. And it was that caveat that really caught my attention with the study. I said, okay, great, I'm glad it helped, but tell me more about why not in every case? What's happening there? And when you dig into the data, both in this study and other studies that have confirmed it, what you see is that there's this jagged technological frontier. And that's the term that the lab coined in the very first study, where they said, look, if you think about AI capability as something that is not clearly defined, it's jagged. So on one task, AI can do the task on par with humans, but maybe on a similar task, it actually can't do it on par with humans. And a human might look at those two tasks and say, hey, those are very similar. Any human that could do one could do the other, but AI is not human. And sometimes it has these limitations that we simply don't know about. And that's what the study really unearthed, is that it found that for certain tasks, AI actually wasn't that great at it, but the consultants, and these are very highly trained, highly paid people, experts at their craft, they couldn't tell the difference, right? They assumed, hey, this has been really great at doing ABC. So on D, I'm going to fall asleep at the wheel a little bit and just assume that the AI is going to be just as good. And what we found in reviewing the results is that actually many of the consultants became counterproductive. So their accuracy went down, the quality of their work, as well as the speed. And so we found that you really have to be careful when you're just deploying AI across your entire workforce, right? Think of how many tasks an entire company does in a day. Never mind one employee. Think about a 10,000 person company. The number of tasks that occur in a day is pretty large. And the fact is, we don't know which of those tasks AI can do and which ones they can't do, which ones they should do and which ones they shouldn't do. And I'll make it even harder and say that this changes daily with model updates and different capabilities. So it's this jagged frontier that is continually moving, which just makes AI transformation really, really difficult to do perfectly.
Well, I'm going to fight the temptation for us to go down a AI as a drug rabbit hole when we're introducing the work. So
I will say, Steve, though, that I find that metaphor funny because clinical trials should have happened before the introduction of the drug. Right. So now we're all playing catch up of like, you're already taking the drug, Steve, and we're just testing now to see the harm.
That is funny and a little bit scary, quite frankly. Well, so to dig into those edge cases, how do you address them? I mean, is this primarily a people issue? Like maybe there's some people for which AI is really well suited and some aren't. You had talked about it as certain tasks, but it sounds to me like the differences between acceptable tasks for AI and unacceptable tasks for AI, again, as a human, I may have no perception of when I kind of go from one into the other. So how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, one additional layer of complexity before we start solutioning. Other studies outside of D-Cubed has shown that it's not just a jagged frontier with tasks, it's also with employees. So there are certain employees that react differently to AI. So whether you're a highly trained subject matter expert or very new to the field, sometimes can result in a different outcome. Whereas unfortunately, in one study, it showed that the junior employees were greatly enhanced with AI, and the subject matter experts, the top of the field, the like best at their craft, were actually penalized. They actually had worst results. And we find this in various studies showing that actually who's using the AI, not just the task, but who's using it matters too. So just one more layer of complexity there. So how do you solve for this? I don't think planning paralysis is the right, situation for everyone to be in, of just throw your hands up, we can't do anything. Really, the solution I advise people to consider is you really need to focus on a culture of experimentation, because I don't see an end in sight. It used to be digital transformation was, let's go from point A to point B. We did it. We're now a digital company, check the box, close the project plan. Now let's get on with business as usual. With AI, there's no more point B. It's just ongoing changes. And some folks like the Azim Azars of the world say it's exponential changes. So not only is the change not going to relent, but it's going to actually increase in pace and severity. But regardless of whether you think it's exponential change or just ongoing change, it means that transformation is now ongoing. And what that means is that the AI capabilities, this jagged frontier that I spoke about, is going to just be in constant state of movement. And when that's the case, companies really need to rethink their ability to monitor and understand process, people, capabilities in this fundamentally new way. So in D cubed, we like to use the clinical trials metaphor, but companies can monitor the jagged frontier within their own company by doing their own, equivalent of a clinical trial, ongoing experimentation to continually test where is the boundary, where is the harm, how do you mitigate the harm, where are the benefits, where do we see the great productivity, and always have a pulse on that. That's not the type of monitoring companies have today. We've really never seen anything like this where it's, an ongoing monitoring scheme of the changes in technology, the changes in process, the changes in skill sets simultaneously. But I think in order to even get to a place where that's possible, you first need to focus on culture, because your people need to be ready for ongoing experimentation, ongoing change, ongoing transformation. Otherwise, it'll all just flatline. And so really focusing on, are the people ready for this new world? And now that they are, what can we do to continually monitor those people and that technology to make sure that you're continually optimizing both? When I look at AI in the workforce, I can't help but notice that humans have put in so much effort just working with other humans in the workplace. There's countless frameworks and interventions and monitoring and programs just to make you work with your colleague or your manager, and have better work relationships. And so just optimizing human labor in the workforce has taken, centuries to figure out. And now we're introducing AI, and that's challenging some of those frameworks, challenging some of those conditions that we've become accustomed to. And we don't have the frameworks in place to integrate AI quite yet. And so it does take a lot of experimentation to figure out what those need to be.
Half of accounting and finance professionals say AI helps them quickly consume data and tackle time-consuming tasks, according to new research from Workiva. Don't get left behind. AI isn't just for tech demos. Today, it can draft earnings narratives, flag risks, benchmark ESG disclosures, and even prep your next board meeting, if you know where to look. Start with 9 ways the Office of the CFO should use AI right now at workiva.com/PR-CFOAI. See where AI is already working and how to make it work for you. That's workiva.com/PR-CFOAI.
Yeah, I find it so interesting because you hear AI and you think technology, right? That's obviously the first thing that comes to mind. But really what this is a cultural transformation, like a change management transformation, because it is a complete shift in mindset for the people that underpin your company and do all of the work, of your company in how they are approaching utilizing, this tool or technology. And that shift is something I loved what you said about not going from A to B anymore. It's like there is no point B. The whole point is we have to transform from a mindset perspective how to approach how we work and really keep that like a dynamic, agile, flexible mindset, which is a challenge for those who have spent, to your point and your other point around the seasoned experts, and the subject matter experts. It almost goes against or counters the decades of experience that have led them to be the leader and the successful expert that they are. And that's truly a shift. I mean, that's really disruptive.
Yes, it's disruptive, and it's challenging and threatening to humans who are proud of their craft, who have spent a lot of time accumulating subject matter expertise that now anyone can access who can query an LLM, and it brings the cost of those expertise down to zero, which presents a real emotional challenge for humans about, what's our place in the world, what's our place in the workforce. And I do think ultimately this is a people story, I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to other tech or data science leaders. And I've been in data science since before it was cool, back when it was just machine learning. And I talk to people like that who have been around for a long time. And it always used to be technology. You nerd out on new random forest algorithm or something. But now when you talk to those same people, they're all talking about people and mindset. Like the conversation, even in the tech community, has shifted because what we're seeing is people will not adopt these tools. They simply will not until they figure out how it actually helps them thrive. And so if it's seen as a threat, why on earth would you, like, it goes against your very like instincts. And so really figuring out in a workforce, how do you optimize the human labor, which is all the people issue, so that we can thrive and be our best selves and not be threatened by AI, but actually have AI help us be our best selves. And I have to say, I don't think many companies have the recipe for how to do this well yet.
Yeah. And thinking about how we can leverage AI to be our best self, I actually want to think about the other side of that and the threat of not being your best self and this idea of cognitive offloading. And this is something that you talk about, and I hope you can share your expertise here on, is this ever acceptable in some cases where it just makes sense and is okay despite the way it sounds? And if not, how do we avoid falling into this kind of behavioral trap of getting too comfortable with the tool, that can do it all, and offloading some of that cognitive autonomy or agency as the human actors and agents?
Yeah. And if we have any younger listeners, they will know this phenomenon as brain rot. We refer to it as cognitive offloading, which essentially has two different parts to it. There's the attention and retention. So attention is, are you taking in all of the critical details in the process that you are engaged in? So are you like fully engaged? Is your mind working to really think critically about what is happening, why, and how? And then the retention is, are you retaining the information that you're consuming after you've stopped? For a week, a month, a year from now, are you still going to recall those details? And I actually think there are two separate but both important situations. And actually the way to mitigate them is also quite different. Let's start with retention, because we were talking a bit about being a subject matter expert. And when I think about the risk of cognitive offloading as it relates to retention, the first study that I think of is this one from MIT that came out recently, Your Brain on ChatGPT, or something very clever like that. And they found that when a user of ChatGPT, or I assume it's generalized to any LLM, wrote an essay using it, they only retained about 20% of that essay after the fact. Whereas if you used your brain or a more traditional like search method, you retained much, much more, most of the essay. And so their study essentially suggests that retention is really hit hard with these LLMs. And so I think about, okay, well, does this matter? Is this a problem? And I'll go back to mastery of craft and subject matter expertise as the decision here. If you are engaging in some sort of learning exercise because you are pursuing mastery of your craft. So let's say you're trying to get a PhD in biology and you're reading a biology textbook. Retaining information in that textbook is really critical for becoming a subject matter expert in the field and retaining that information so that you can then build on it and continue to expand it. And so in that situation, this potential for cognitive offloading actually could have huge risk of your ability to become that top tier expert in that field because you're not retaining the information. But, let's say you're just, reading the newspaper and you read, like in the Washington Post this morning, there's a story, this is true, about a cat that, was a shop cat, so it was always in a convenience store, and it went missing. Do I need to retain that information long into the future? No. Did I find it interesting for the 2 minutes I read it today? Sure. But I don't need to remember that next week. And so if I consumed that information through an LLM instead of through a newspaper, sure, maybe I wouldn't remember it next week, but the risk of subverting my subject matter expertise just simply is not there. And so I think context matters. On the attention side, I think it also matters. It has less to do with subject matter expertise and more to do with the risk of the process you're engaged in. So, let's say you're a surgeon about to go into surgery, and there's some AI system that did all of your surgical prep for you, and now you're not really paying attention in the prep phase of that surgery because AI is doing it. That's significantly high risk for that patient, right? They probably wouldn't do that because the cognitive offloading would present too high of a risk to the actual process at hand. Whereas you can think of a million other situations where it's okay to not pay super close attention for the process because it's pretty low risk. And so in all of that, it comes down to understanding, are we talking about people paying attention or are we talking about people remembering? And then in each of those, is this process going to prevent them from either, be showing up and being excellent when it matters, or continuing to accumulate skill sets in something that they want to do? And being mindful of that, I think, helps you to navigate this cognitive offloading in a more sophisticated way than just saying, oh, it's bad, therefore you shouldn't use AI. Because, we should. And, figuring out the boundaries is part of it.
Your example of the surgeon is resonating with me because I was just speaking to a physician about how, their practice and hospital is bringing AI in to support, dictation and patient notes. And I recently read a study, talking about kind of the risks in the healthcare system, which, is where you definitely want to watch out for, I would think, this cognitive offloading when it comes to patient care and et cetera. But I want to shift, if we can, to this idea about thinking about AI as a teammate instead of a tool. And for better or worse, can you kind of tell us about how we're seeing that evolve in the workplace today and kind of the thinking about that and the evolution of AI being used or leveraged as your coworker rather than a tool for you to deploy?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of signs that the ship has sailed on this, and the transition from a tool to a teammate is well underway. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I like to remind people that it is a tool, it's a technology, it's not a person, but the world doesn't listen to my opinion on everything. So the ship has sailed. People are starting to really treat it as a teammate. And in a lot of the studies that we have at D-Cubed looking at this, it shows that there are beneficial aspects of treating AI as a teammate in terms of workplace productivity, in terms of democratizing access to expertise. But we still really don't have the scaffolding to understand how to integrate AI as a teammate well, which is why I think it's definitely experimental. It's definitely, higher risk for your workforce in terms of understanding workplace satisfaction and what does it mean to have an AI teammate instead of a human teammate, or even a AI boss instead of a human boss. I don't know that a lot of humans have been brought along and are ready for that transition, even though it is seeming to start to happen. There's a big debate right now around personalities and if AI should or shouldn't have personalities, which is, right in the middle of this question of, well, are we trying to treat it like a human or like a tool? And if you'll remember the initial backlash from ChatGPT-5, they had stripped out the personality and people got upset, said this is too dry. And so it really is this live debate playing out right now of how are we going to start governing this? Is it by HR or IT?
I just thought that my AI buddy was just mad at me, like it was a bad day. I didn't know what happened.
I will say, I'm one of those who is, quite polite to my AI friend. I say please and I say thank you, and I always think it's funny. You see the two different schools of thought that people employ when interacting, but I'm realizing like, oh my God, maybe I am using AI as a coworker, or I'm at least treating it like a person in that way, who recognizes politeness.
Right? Well, what you're doing is de-risking the situation if AI becomes our overlords. Like saying please is going to work out well for you. And it's very low cost. Just throw in a please and you de-risk that potential future of the dystopian AI,
They say you can measure character by the actions you take when nobody's watching. So maybe the way you interact with your AI might be, an indication of your character. Well,
yes, a lot of good data for sociologists and anthropologists, for sure.
Right. Well, Jen Stave from the Digital Data Design or D-Cubed Institute at Harvard, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing these insights. It's fascinating.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you again to our guest, Dr. Jen Stave, and thank you for listening.
This has been The Pre-Read, brought to you by Workiva, the world's only unified platform for financial reporting, sustainability, audit, and risk.
We've got more insights and hot takes coming your way, so be sure to follow or subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your edge.
If you liked the show, leave a review, send it to someone you love, or just shout it out on your next team call.
We'll be back next week. Until then, go lead it like you mean it.
I'm Melissa Zucker, and that's Steve Soder. Our lead producer is Mike Ravagno, with audio support from Joseph Machinsky and Drew Hayes.
Claire Allison is our graphic designer. Transcripts are created and edited by Courtney Kimsey. And thanks to our digital and social team, Mike Berg, Katie Carr, and Michael Karnowski.